Good, wonderful. So first of all, a big thanks for having me on stage today. And a super exciting topic, which is all about how do I really bring productivity, visibility and agility into factories. My name is Dominik and I'm running product management at SAP in our standard development organization. What I want to talk about with you today is really three main points. First of all, why is Industry 4.0 such an important topic? Although, as probably you all know, it's a topic that is at least 10 years old. But obviously a lot of things have happened and have changed since the very first ideas of implementing Industry 4.0 strategies have evolved. The second point I want to focus on is then really take a step like we are here today into a factory, into an intelligent factory, and talk about what is it that makes a factory intelligent and what are the implications on building resilient supply chain processes. And then I will close today with a little bit of an innovation outlook, so talking high level on our roadmap. That's also why at the end of the session I'll talk quite a bit about capabilities that we will bring out in the next months and years. But let us dive right in and start with the first agenda point around our strategy overview. So I think all of you have noticed, for good and for bad, how much the topic of supply chain has become center stage in headlines. Whether that's the disruptions that happen because of macroeconomic trends, whether it was tiny events that stopped entire supply chains. Think about a ship stuck in the Suez Canal. We all have seen the impacts that the pandemic had. So I think there's no introduction needed why digital supply chain is such a strategic topic nowadays. Especially currently, if I look at the automotive industry, the semiconductor crisis, so really the huge fluctuation of supply on one hand side, but also demand, if I look at consumer behaviors on the other hand side, are two other challenges, just to name a few. What all of these challenges have in common, we believe, is the fact that supply chains require resiliency. That these little events, right, a ship stuck or one tiny electronic component that is missing can basically have an entire industry or even multiple industries in crisis not being able to perform to their fullest extent. So this, let me call it, disruption or this resiliency that supply chains need is for us really the center stage to bring improvements to our customers. And one key pillar, as Asim already mentioned, is by innovating factory and logistics processes. And we do this with our Industry 4.0 strategy by really bringing Industry 4.0 capabilities into factories for three main purposes. First, we see if you run highly productive factory processes, it gives you space to breathe, it optimizes your output, and it gives you the best leverage to react to these disruptions. But even more importantly is visibility, that you can, and you already learned in the supply chain planning session, how important it is to anticipate supply chain disruptions that are happening. So now in the factory, it's of course super important to then also execute on these changing consumer demands. For example, by putting labor into furlough, so having short-term employment, or by perhaps even shutting down to production, perhaps by moving production between facilities. So those are all examples in how supply chain resiliency can be built by implementing Industry 4.0 capabilities. But that's just a few anecdotal words from my side. We actually wanted to know in a little bit more detail what you can see here on the slide. What are some very tangible business benefits companies achieve when implementing Industry 4.0 capabilities? So this was last year, one of the most challenging years for supply chains. We asked more than 700 customers, both SAP but also non-SAP customers, by the way, how they experienced the benefits for themselves when implementing Industry 4.0 capabilities. And what you see on the top of the screen, I guess is not a huge surprise, and this is what I was talking about, business performance. Increasing productivity, increasing the output of factories was one major benefit companies could achieve. This is mostly due to the fact that highly automated factories, if they are well integrated with the world of IT, allow you to run really end-to-end business processes and hence increase the productivity. What was similarly exciting is when we look at product excellence. So also product quality is, of course, a huge aspect that companies want to improve when implementing Industry 4.0 capabilities. So here we found that more than 84% of our customers saw actually a significant increase in product excellence or quality. What is perhaps the most exciting part is the third pillar here, customer experience. So we found that companies not only have an impact on the, let me say, output that factories generate, so the real productivity in the factory, but also how customers receive or perceive these services. It even allows companies to completely change their business models. One very common example is to significantly tailor to customer configuration or customization requirements. That actually happens in many, many industries, whether it's apparel, whether it's machinery, or even discrete components, or even in the process industry, like the line here to my side. Customers, consumers think of us, ourselves, want to have the possibility to customize and configure products. I can go online and design my own sneaker. And it's similarly happening with parts and components, with machinery. But this leads to the fact, or to the result, that you suddenly need to produce much smaller lot sizes, but still in huge quantities. And managing this with Industry 4.0 by having a tight integration with your configuration and quoting process, for example, how you interact with your engineering department into the factory are all key contributors to also increasing customer experience. Good, but now let us actually answer the question, what is SAP's strategy in and around Industry 4.0, or as we call it, Industry 4.0? And the first thing you will notice on this picture is that we have a very broad view of what we consider very important when realizing an Industry 4.0 strategy. So a lot of customers I talk to, they're very focused on what happens in the four walls of the factory. Right? They're focusing on their plant, on their factory processes, and I fully agree that this is, let's say, the center stage where industrial transformation with Industry 4.0 happens. What we see just as important is all the processes that feed into factory and plant operations. Let's start on the left here. Let's start in the engineering department. Any manufacturer of complex machinery, components, or configurable materials will know how important it is to have a tight integration between your engineering design processes, so how new products are being created with CAD files and so on. And many of you will also be aware of the, let me say, how cumbersome it is to keep the world of engineering and the shop floor in sync. When you have new engineering designs, when you have also, let's say, translating engineering bill of materials to manufacturing bill of materials, and eventually your routings, how you execute. So this is where our focus starts. This is also, for example, where our partnership with Siemens lies, of tightly integrating PLM and CAD processes, so really core product design with factory processes in SAP. The second pillar, of course, the factory, right? How do we bring intelligence into the factory? But just as important, how do we tightly integrate the logistics or the intralogistics processes? I think we will hear that from our customer later, and also tackle this in the panel discussion, how important it is for the productivity of a plant to really tightly integrate intralogistics processes. So how do I get my material when it first hits my warehouse or my production facilities to the point where it's actually being staged and being used for production. The third pillar, to close here also the factory circle, is intelligent assets. So really moving to intelligent factory processes for us includes running predictive maintenance strategies, and not only starting with a deterministic maintenance plan of when I need to maintain which asset, but really moving to predictive or even prescriptive maintenance strategies. The last pillar is about the people, right? The factory workers, the production supervisors, the maintenance crews. We believe that it's just as important of bringing new technologies into factories to take the workforce, to take the workers with us on this journey by providing them very easy to consume user experience. Forget about the good old SAP WebDimpro screens, right? We work here with very new UX capabilities to really address the shop floor. How to provide handheld devices, right? A maintenance crew doesn't work on a static monitor, but also how to provide, let's say, the decision support that even a production supervisor, if a machine fails or if a part doesn't appear, knows how to best react, for example, with what-if analysis and planning capabilities. And all of this sits on our foundation of the industrial Internet of Things. This is another facet of how we bring intelligence to the factory. As you have already noticed, I just tackled the horizontal part, the business process side. What are all the business processes impacting a factory? This is for us the secret sauce of bringing intelligence to the factory. And the second part is really intelligence with technology. Using IoT data, for example, by taking visual inspections of assembly or production processes and therefore automating quality inspections, right? By having a machine learning algorithm that interprets images that are being filmed of a worker assembling a part, and that only notifies me as the worker or the production supervisor if there is a non-conformance being recognized. A lot of these technologies are part of our SAP IoT portfolio and deeply embedded into our factory processes. Now, to go a little bit deeper into the factory floor, but I think we already talked about it quite a lot. We focus on two things. On one hand side, the horizontal process integration, which very often starts in the ERP system, where a lot of enterprise processes happen. Think about your maintenance plan, your quality management plan, or even managing core logistics and inventories. That is an enterprise function here on the top. So first of all, we focus on deeply embedding these enterprise processes into the shop floor. But secondly, and even more important, enabling factories to run completely autonomously. Because any factory manager you talk to will tell you that they need the decision power and the tools and the capabilities to run their factory, their plant most efficiently without being dependent on enterprise processes. So this handshake of running enterprise processes on one hand side, for example, a production plan, right, that optimizes, as you learned in our last session, where I need to produce across factories, that runs, of course, cross-factory, and combining that now with the shop floor, with the production supervisor's capability to execute this plan, but then even more importantly, react to all the disruptions that happen in the day-to-day operations of the factory, is one example of how we combine enterprise processes with the factory reality. And lastly, of course, really going all the way into the vertical integration, also to the machine and device layer. I think personally, this is a reason why a lot of Industry 4.0 transformations have been tough or have been hard to roll out because there were no standards how to do that. Now with the OPC UA Foundation, now with the Open Industry 4.0 Alliance, many other standards like the Asset Administration Shell, we suddenly see the TCO, the cost of bringing the IT and OT world, so hardware, machines, devices, into software processes has significantly decreased. We already spoke about the technology enablers. So, of course, to get a factory intelligent, we believe we need big data. We need to harvest this wealth of machine and device data to use it, like in my example, for visual inspections, but also to gain better insights. Where can I improve my manufacturing processes? Where can I shift capacities? Where can I improve quality processes? Yet another facet of these technology enablers is what we consider smart sensing. Smart sensing is all about bringing the events that we can gather throughout an entire factory process, for example, by scanning materials that I'm staging from my warehouse to my production line, but also tracking of handling units throughout production, or even managing the WIP, so the work in progress throughout my production. Tracking this, for example, with RFID technology or sensor technology allows me to automate a lot of processes, such as postings of goods issue, goods receipts, automating quality inspections, and much more. So that is yet another investment that we have actually just launched in Q1 this year. Many customers of ours that are working with automatic identification technologies will recognize this from our capabilities. Now, going forward, we of course don't do this alone. We at SAP are also surrounded by a fantastic ecosystem. And I think even today, having Concircle with us on the stage in a little while, and many more partners that make this happen with us, is what I feel one of the major differentiators when we work with customers. I already talked a little bit about here, on the top of the slide, how important, in our opinion, it is to bring standardization to allowing the worlds of IT and OT to integrate much deeper with each other at a lower cost of operations. That is what we have done with many of the names you see here on the slide. As I mentioned, the OPC Foundation, where we are a board member of, Catena X for the automotive industry, which really takes Industry 4.0 out of the four walls of a company and brings these use cases into the end-to-end value chain of the automotive industry. Also very, very exciting initiative we were delighted to be co-founding. Just as important, we work also very closely with hardware and automation providers. You can see that very nicely in various showcases that we use to demonstrate to our customers pretty much everything I talk about today. Because the amazing part about our industry, and especially, let's say, the world of Industry 4.0 is everything that moves around, you can see, you can touch, you can relate to. So that's why we have various showcase factories around the world. We'll get a sneak peek into this actually later. And also our partner Concircle will talk about this in a bit. Hyperscalers are also important to this story, because we'll see in the panel discussion later that we believe that running intelligent factories has finally arrived at cloud computing. And to many customers, this is really a paradigm shift. Why would I run a factory that is so fragile to disruption out of a cloud? And here we believe in what we call cloud and edge computing. So not only betting on running processes completely out of the cloud, but actually having an edge device. So nothing else but a small server plate that is completely operated by a partner, where we have a very close partnership with Microsoft that provides the hardware and the operations of it, where we are obviously deploying then our manufacturing operations system to reach that perfect resiliency even on the shop floor, but still orchestrating and standardizing processes in the cloud. In closing, I promised you a little outlook on what is next, right? Where does our roadmap lead? And I've picked out 3 examples from the intelligent factory pillar that we focus on today. The first one is what we call modular production. Now, modular production is not only so much about delivering new software capabilities, but modular production really is a business process transformation in the factory, including the way how your layout, your factory design works. And it follows the whole idea of moving away from a very static routing and having a very deterministic plan of I need to have a static sequence in which I produce, assemble, quality inspect my products, and moving that to a modular approach where essentially I'm reacting every single time I'm deciding where my work in progress moves to next. What is the most efficient operation to do next? We believe there are 3 major parts that are necessary to achieve this. First, using robotics, because obviously I can't operate a static conveyor belt in a modular production. I need AGVs, autonomous guided vehicles, that move whatever it is I'm producing. It could be a vehicle as big as a truck or a passenger vehicle or small parts and components, moving that through the factory and therefore giving the physical capability to basically divert wherever you want to go next with your work in progress. The second piece is intelligence. You need a dynamic routing plan, or we call it a dynamic decision engine, that decides where is it best to move my work in progress to, depending on availability of labor, urgency of my production order, availability of materials, availability of machines and equipment. And the third piece is a tight integration with your logistics processes. Because if I'm producing dynamically, that also means I need to stage my material dynamically. Because I don't know when I release my production order where I will actually need my supply. So those are the three major areas we work on under modular production. What I also want to highlight is, especially in the space of quality management, many companies want to follow a very, very clearly guided process, how they resolve quality issues, following, for example, the VDA endorsed methodology of 8 disciplines. So it's a guided methodology, including root cause analysis and including close collaboration tools that allow you to resolve any type of quality issues that you have with suppliers that you find during your production or within your own processes and that you receive from end customers. So this is a brand new product that we have launched earlier this year especially for the supplier process, and that we will evolve to a full central problem solving capability on our business technology platform in the cloud. The third piece we've already talked about. So we really worked significantly over the last 1.5 years to deeply embed industrial IoT capabilities into our core processes in manufacturing, in asset management, and engineering. I gave a whole bunch of examples how we have done that with visual inspections, by embedding also the smart sensing capabilities if you run automatic identification into logistics processes. And the last highlight here to really point out is our focus has been with our industrial IoT portfolio to out of the box provide the full end-to-end integration from a sensor event, where of course we work with hardware partners, but all the way to postings in ERP, in S/4HANA, in a digital manufacturing cloud, to have that full end-to-end process covered and really automate business processes, which we believe is a major advantage that we have, that we can actually steer and impact our end-to-end processes. In closing, we now talked a lot about a lot of these innovations. I think the best way to make that come to life is by hearing from our customers how they have experienced some of these things I talked about. With Audi, for example, in a factory, they really tried out this whole idea of modular production. So there's and you find more details in our slide deck, but there is a very exciting case where Audi has moved really, truly, and you see here an AGV, where they produce the powertrain, so more than 400 powertrains and engines a day, and where they have done this entirely in a modular approach. Here's a little sneak preview into their factory behind me. But as I mentioned, this is one example of an innovation of an intelligent factory. So I invite you all now to stay with us and hear from more customers. And the next one that we will actually zoom into, completely different industry, away from automotive and to consumer products or electronics with DeLonghi. DeLonghi has actually been recognized as a leader in intelligent factories by the World Economic Forum. And we will now hear how they have actually achieved that and what benefits they were able to achieve.